today I've been asked to make a video on how to use the trace function in Shortcuts a lot. Now if you have an older version it may be slightly different, but this is version 5 and as it happens it's 5 Pro, but I don't think that makes any difference to the trace function. First of all, I do want to say that you cannot make a purse out of a sow's ear and you need a decent image in the first place. If you've got a really bad image, then you're not going to be tracing it and getting a good result no matter what you do to it. Let's go into the trace box and see what we've got. So first of all, we have a choose an image, and I've got some images here. Just pick one out of my stash. And now we can see all the various options that we have. So you have choosing your image, you then have the mode, and I'm just going to click off of use the alpha channel for the moment. Now we have monochrome, we have color layers, or we have a single color. They're fairly self-explanatory. And depending on the type of image you have, depending on what you want to pick out of that. Now this image here I would class as a prime target for a print and cut. I would not be trying to make it into a piecemeal cut. It's got too many different colors, too many different shapes. It would drive you mad trying to do it. So you'd probably want to do a print and cut on that one, but nothing much else. Now, using the alpha channel means that it uses the background to create a line. We'll go into this a little bit more later on. Despeckle takes out tiny little flaws in an image. A high pass filter is supposed to increase detail. This doesn't seem to work in Shortcuts a lot. I've had some very strange happenings if I've tried using a high pass filter, and I have no idea why. Now, smoothing refers quite simply to how many curves the tracer will allow. If you have a very jagged, sharp-cornered image, you probably don't want to put high smoothing on it. It'll round things off too much. Now the detail one controls how many shapes are made for small details. The fewer the shapes, the lower the number. You want more detail, you can add more to the number there. Now the single line threshold I've never had a great deal of success with, and I don't tend to use it. Theoretically, it's supposed to differentiate between having a thick outline and a thin outline. Maybe I just don't tend to trace the right images, but that's what it's supposed to do. Breaking apart outlines means that whatever outlines you have are separated into individual cuts. And that is quite a useful one to have in your checkbox, as it were. Add image layer is for print and cut. Pretty obviously, if you're doing a print and cut, you probably want the coloured pattern. I mean, if you don't want the coloured pattern, then fine, don't do it, but you probably do, so you'd want that checked. And a blackout line is a line that will basically go around the entire object, but won't pick out the detail. It doesn't always turn out to be a complete blackout, but it usually is. But it wouldn't, for example, pick out the holes in the handles there. They would be seen as one part of the whole object. So up here we have show nodes. Now nothing happens until you update the preview. And then you see all the nodes, lots of them. I'm going to click that back off again. And showing the source image is the picture that you originally wanted to trace, and if you whack it all the way to the left you don't see the picture, all the way to the right and you see all of it, and I generally keep it somewhere around halfway so that I can see what I've been tracing, but it doesn't interfere with me seeing the trace lines too much. You can zoom in and out and you can pan. And when in edit mode, you can crop it or draw a mask. Now, if you choose crop, you have these handles which you can pull in. If, for example, I only wanted to trace that bit, then I could do that. And if I want to trace it all, I have to pull it back out again. If I go to draw mask, it lets me draw on things with a square tool. Now this is strange because I'm not used to drawing with square tools. And to be honest, if I were to draw a mask on an image, it would not be with my laptop and the trackpad or a mouse. I would put it onto my iPad and I would do whatever I needed to do on that. That is not my kind of thing. It's too much like hard work and I don't want to do it. You can, however, mask off either the foreground or the background, so you can choose which you are working on. Down here, restore settings. I don't think that actually does much. I've had different numbers in here, clicked restore settings, and they haven't changed, so I don't know if that actually does anything. Save as an SVG, we'll save it as an SVG wherever you want to save it in your folders. Update preview will show you what is going to be cut, where the lines are traced, as it were. And you have another box here which you can check to prompt to continue tracing. So that means you might want to do one piece of tracing and then say, well, actually, I want to do some more tracing after I've done that. So you can tick it or not, depending on what you want to do. So those are the basic controls. Now, what would we do if we wanted to make this into a print and cut? Well, as it happens, I would probably choose to use the alpha channel because if I don't, I'm not going to get a clear line with this one. Now, the reason I know that is because I have traced this before and I know it doesn't give a clear line. Somewhere in this image, I think there are shadows around the outside edges and the software is sensitive enough to find them. Now you can, of course, put the contrast up or down so you can decide how much is going to be included in a particular trace. And if I take the source image away, you can see pretty much where the lines are going to be, and you can see this horrible jagged edges. Terrible. Really, really bad. If I click on the use the alpha channel, however, I get a clean trace because it's picked up all the white background. So I could actually do that, add an image layer, and if I click on OK, it's going to take a little while to do that. Okay, here we are. And you can see, just let me ungroup this, I have my image and I have my cut lines. So there we go, they are there. And because I asked it to break apart outlines, the outlines are ungrouped already. I don't have to ungroup them. If I want to remove, for example, the inside of the handles, I could pull those out and get rid of them, or I can put it back again. So that's how I would get a print and cut from that particular design. So this, for example, is print and cut. And over here, if I click on the image, we have print and cut print. So that is precisely what we need if we're going to do a print and cut. The other thing, of course, is we would need to click on the page or the document, and we would need to show the registration marks. Now, if you have a different kind of image, for example, you have a PNG which has got solid color fill. Now this one is well suited, click off the use alpha channel because I don't need it. This one is well suited to having color layers. And you can choose how many colors it's going to actually give you. And I've only got 5 colors there. Break apart the outlines and update the preview. Just check I'm going to get what I want. Slide my source image down And all these lines can be cut out in different color cards and make my image. And when I put them on my mat, I can separate them out, just ungroup them, separate them out and do what I want to do with them. So that is well suited for that particular type of cut because it is a PNG and because it has very definitive color boundaries. If I come into this one, which is a JPEG, for example, and show my image, there we go, that's my image, just do that, update my preview, and you can see if I do it on this one, I've got lots of different pieces. I would never be putting that together as individual cuts. I just wouldn't be doing it. So again, it depends on what your image is like as to what you're actually going to do. But I definitely wouldn't be putting that together layer upon layer. It just wouldn't work. Flowers are a good thing to do with this because you can divide it out into colors. You can have a base color and you can add different color accents to different parts of the flower. But try not to make it too complicated because it will just end up looking very messy. So there we go for that. Now, one thing you may not be aware of is that you have an import SVG option. Some PNGs will work without you having to trace them. Not all will. It depends on how they've been designed, what software was used to design it, and that you're not going to know until you try it. But for example, with this PNG, if I import it, and I'm going to resize it because it's huge, I'll put it down to about 12 centimeters, that's better. Okay, now if I look at the preview, you can see I already have my outer cut line. I don't have to do anything to that other than make sure that if I ungroup this, for example, I'll pull one piece away, that is actually listed as a print and cut. Print and cut, oh dear. And that this is labeled as a print and cut print. Now the reason I say that is because if you do not do that, when you actually print it, you might find that this cut line actually prints itself. Now you can see that the cut line appears to have disappeared. It hasn't, it's just invisible. So you select it, you go to your colouring palette and you just add a colour to it and the line will reappear. There we are. It's still there. It's just that it didn't have a colour assigned to it. And sometimes if you import an SVG, you'll think there are some lines missing, but if you select it and add a colour, you might find them appearing again. Don't know why it does it on some SVGs and not others, but that again is probably due to how they were made in the first place. So that is quite an interesting thing to look at. Right, now I want to go back briefly to our cups. And here we go. If I choose this and I go to try and do a colour trace, it's just not doing a great job at all. If we zoom in, it's literally a mess. It's not going to be cuttable. This is, ugh, it's absolutely awful. If you find yourself with an image which is not working in Shortcut slot, it's worthwhile trying to put it into a different piece of software. Now I'm going to close this down and I'm just going to go into Super Vectorizer. Hang on a second, let's go to import image. Okay, I'm importing this. The very same drawing. It has different modes. Mode 1, you can choose how many colors you have and it will stack the scanned colors, and so you will get, you know, the orange or the brown or the blue or the whatever. And when you export it, you can export it as an SVG, and if I put that onto my desktop, okay, just going to save that for the moment. So that is one mode that it has. It has a different mode called mode 2, and you can choose to have lots of colours in it or not to have colours. You've got a line mode as well, so let's have a look at the line mode. This actually, if I zoom in, whoops, a bit too far, whoa, there we go. If I zoom in this far, you can see it has actually traced around the different colours pretty well. That is actually not doing a bad job. So if I export that, for example, as an SVG and save it, oh, hang on, let me see, just need to alter the name of this, just put a number in front of it. There we go. So it's actually saved two versions of the same design. And if I open that, it's going to open it in Shortcuts a lot. And here we have our image. Let me just switch off those registration marks, which are irritating me. We have a really clean trace for the image. In comparison to what we were getting before, this is pretty amazing. Now, agreed, you've got some areas where you have some double lines, but you can play around in Super Vectorizer and you can get it to look pretty good. You don't have to do anywhere near as much playing around as you do in Shortcuts a lot to get a different result. So you can see that in this particular mode, I've got the whole thing set out into different colours, and each layer is overlaid onto the one underneath it. So you can take bits out of there, you can mix and match them, you can do what you like, but it's all separated with colours, then it makes it quite easy to see. It's a very, very useful way of vectorizing images if you're having difficulty with Shortcut Slot. Shortcut Slot is great if you just want to do a print and cut. That's fine, no problem. I don't really care for it too much for doing other kind of tracings. Really and truly, it's not a program designed for tracing, it's designed for designing in. As with most cutter software, it's really designed for actually drawing in vector format and not for the rest of it. The trace function is an added functionality rather than what it's meant for. I'm going to select all and just get rid of that now. But there we go, that is how to use the trace function in Shortcut Slot. Hope you found that useful. I hope it gave you a bit more of an idea of how to use it. Basically, it just takes practice. You need to get some images, get some nice simple images first of all, work out how to do those and do them well, and then work up to the more complicated stuff. But if you really get stuck, try Super Vectorizer because that's pretty easy to use. Okay, take care and keep safe.